and welcome to the first episode of On the Pulse by Diabetes MDT. In this episode, we are joined by Professor Ketan Dhatariya, who is a consultant in diabetes and endocrinology at the Norfolk and Norwich University Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust. So hello, Ketan, and welcome to this video series.
Hello, thanks for inviting me.
No problem at all. So we'll start it off with, please can you tell us about the early days of your career and how you began working in diabetes?
This is a bit of a long story, really. So I graduated in 1991 from a medical school that doesn't exist anymore called the Middlesex Hospital. And after I did my house officer posts and senior house officer posts, I came to the end of my training and I'd got my exam, my MRCP, and I didn't have a job to go to. And then there was a job advert in the BMJ which said, doing diabetes on the Isle of Wight for a couple of weeks. And I thought, I've never done diabetes, Isle of Wight in the summertime. That's quite nice. Let's go down there. And I got down there, and the chap that I worked for at the time, a chap called Aaron Baxi, who I love, without limit, because of where he helped me, what he helped me with. He said to me within about 2 or 3 days, first of all, he said, sit with me in my clinic and learn what I do, because he realized I hadn't done any diabetes. And then he watched me doing the clinic. He said, you ought to think about this. You're good at this. Do diabetes. And I was like, I don't want to do diabetes. I was very much into sticking needles into people and doing various different interventions. And I wanted to be an intensivist, ideally, or something similar along those lines. And he said, no, do diabetes. Okay, you're a locum. We haven't got anybody taking the job. So you stay here for as long as you like until you get a job. And I was like, okay, fine. So I ended up spending a year on the Isle of Wight. It was just a phenomenal experience, and he let me do so much. And I applied for about 125 jobs, or just under 125 jobs, and was never shortlisted for any of them. And he was incensed that I had got everything. I was, reasonably good at my job, and he tried to help me. And because I didn't want to do diabetes at the time, I'd applied for cardiology, anesthetics, clinical pharmacology, all kinds of anything but diabetes. And he kept on saying to me, do diabetes, you're good at this. They eventually said, you've got to leave the Isle of Wight because you're too expensive. I was being paid like £12.86 an hour back in 1990, late 1990s. And I left and I didn't have a job to go to. So I actually sat on my bottom at home for about 3 months trying to find a job. And eventually, and I was frustrated. I was really frustrated, as you might imagine. And eventually a job came up advertised as a junior doctor as a registrar at St Thomas's in London. And so I said, I can't, I've done a year of diabetes. I might as well just go for a diabetes job. And they interviewed me and they said, yeah, we'll take you. And that's how I got into diabetes.
So you mentioned Dr. Aaron Baxi there having an influence on your career. Have there been other great influences on your career, and what role have they played?
So there are many, there are so many people. Everybody I work with in any capacity touches me in some way and influences what I do. And that they could be, senior to me, they could be junior to me. It doesn't matter. Everybody I work with has an influence because of, that's the way I like to think of it. There's one particular person who will always remain anonymous. Who one of the things that I used to do, which goes back to the Isle of Wight, was when jobs were advertised, I used to ring up the people and say, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, and this is, what kind of person are you looking for? And there was one person I did this for, very eminent in this day and age. And they said to me, and I said, I went through all my spiel, this is what I do. And he went, actually, we're looking for high flyers. And he put the phone down on me. And it taught me two things. First of all, how never to talk to people and never underestimate them. And secondly, I have a fire underneath me to say, you know what, if that's what people think of me, I'm going to try and prove them wrong. So I always strive to be better, because I never want to be thought of as lazy or not as somebody who can actually do the job. So that's what drives me every day. So that individual really, I think of them every day almost because of what happened, how that individual spoke to me. But everybody touches me. Everybody influences what I do.
So you spent most of your career at the Norfolk and Norwich University Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust, which has a great reputation for delivering diabetes services. What have been the highlights of your time in Norfolk, and what is it that Norfolk does that makes it stand out from the crowd?
I think it. So when I was looking for consultant posts, I did all my training in and around London and Southeast Thames region, so I thought I'd always be staying in that area. And I applied for consultant posts when I came back from my training in the US, and of course was unsuccessful, which is fine. But I came to Norfolk, and actually the benefit of working in somewhere like Norfolk, in like Norwich, which had at the time a very new medical school with a reasonably small department, but very successful department. I was working with some people who had national recognition for what they did. So one of my colleagues, now long retired, chap called Richard Greenwood, who was one of the founders of ABCD, Mike Sampson, who many of you will know, who was the previous chair of the Joint British Diabetes Societies for Inpatient Care. You know, they set a lot of groundwork. They did a lot of work, and I was very lucky that Richard and Mike allowed me to. They gave me a bit of freedom. They could say, you know, do what you want to do, you know, and we'll support you. And so I chose inpatient diabetes. Mike was very kind to me at the time because he involved me in some of the things that he was doing with inpatient diabetes, and I was just like, yeah, this is good because so few people are doing this. I think we ought to make a difference here. And of course, it's a clear need, and it still is a need. And so they helped me, involved me in lots of different things. And then as I did my own stuff, they allowed me to do it. And that's similar with the footwork that I do. Again, one of my colleagues who's now retired, looking after the foot clinic, but the potential of the team that I work with in foot disease is phenomenal. And so my job has always been to try and encourage people to try and reach their own potential and reach the maximum potential. And so actually the people I work with have joined me on the journey. They've taken that and they've flown with it. So my principal podiatrist, Catherine Gooday, you know, she's just done a PhD. We publish regularly together. So I'm very lucky to have been able to work in lots of different areas and reached a reasonable degree of success in most of them because of the environment that I work in. So I'm very happy to describe myself as a medium fish in a medium pond rather than a small fish in a big pond, which I would have been in London, I think.
So you're really interested in researching about DKA, and Expertscape cites you as the #1 researcher for DKA in the world. What is it about this particular area that holds your attention?
So, yeah, it's interesting because when I was a registrar in diabetes, as I said, what I really wanted to do is like put needles into people and do stuff and actually be an intensivist. That I really would have liked to have been that. And I did do a year of intensive care training when I was a registrar. I took my out of program experience and did 1 year. And actually what I really wanted to concentrate was the endocrinology of critical illness, because that was a really interesting thing to me. It remains an interesting, it's an interest to me. But when I did the intensive care, I realized actually that was really hard work. And when you realize that as a consultant, you still may have to come in at 3 o'clock in the morning because one of your juniors can't put in an arterial line or whatever, that was like, I think I'd rather go for the easy life. And rather than being an intensivist with an interest in endocrinology, I thought I'd be an endocrinologist with an interest in intensive care. And of course, the areas where those two meet are at the front door, so emergency diabetes care. So I thought to myself, well, you know what are the things that really interest me? So diabetic ketoacidosis. I got into diabetic ketoacidosis because of a conversation that I had with an anesthetic colleague of mine who kept on prodding me. This is back in about 2005, 2006, kept on really challenging me during a journey that we had together about why diabetologists insist on using normal saline as the resuscitation fluid in DKA when it was known to cause lots of problems. And other than just say, well, that's because we've always done it that way, I couldn't think of another argument. And so I went back and actually did a literature search, found out why, and actually I wrote an editorial, and I was very lucky. It was published in the BMJ, and the JBDS at the time was just a fledgling organization. And the first guideline that they were writing, or one of the first ones, was DKA. And on the back of that editorial, they asked me to join the group. And I've been part of JBDS and DKA since then. And at the moment, I find myself in the very, very fortunate position to have been interested in a subject that not many people are publishing in. And so as a result, because I get to publish in this stuff, because I've written the guidelines, because I've worked with some of the many eminent people from around the world in the subject, that, the Expertscape, their algorithm has has put me at the top, which I'm, very humbled, actually, very humble. It's very humbling, but very nice.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good achievement. So we understand that you're currently working on a new global consensus document for DKA with the ADA, the American Association for Clinical Endocrinology, the Endocrine Society, the EASD, and Diabetes UK. Is there anything you can tell us about what it is likely to come out in this document and when it is set to be released?
So we're currently writing at the moment. There's Guillermo Perez, who's the god of inpatient diabetes, is the senior author on from Atlanta. There's myself, and there's a Shivani Mishra from Imperial representing EASD, and Gianpaolo Fedini from Italy, and a few others from the US representing the other organizations. I think we've had lots of conversations. I think one of the things that's coming out is that most of the world really, really like what JBDS has done. And they realized that the ADA consensus document published in 2009 is very, very out of date. So it's a consensus document, and there will be some changes to the JBDS document, not very big, not very huge. I mean, I think we've agreed a definition, which is very different from the ADA definition and much, much closer to the UK JBDS definition. There is a minor change. It won't make a huge difference to what we do in the UK. There are a few other things. I think that they're very much the original document, which was written by Ann Kilvert and Mark Savage. They did some phenomenal groundwork, and we've obviously just tweaked it over the years. But it was written in such a pragmatic way that anybody could use it, and therefore it really hasn't changed much from our point of view. There are some tweaks, of course, but I think that will form the basis of the main document. But we'll wait and see. As I said, it's a long way to go. We're going to present the preliminary data at the ADA in San Diego this summer, and then it will be launched formally at the EASD in Hamburg in October. So that's when we'll actually launch it properly.
So you mentioned your involvement with the JBDS earlier, and you're currently the co-chair of the organisation. As you come towards the end of your time as the co-chair of the organisation, what will you look back on with the most satisfaction?
Working with a phenomenal group of people who have the same degree of commitment as I do. I think this is not a job you can do on your own, and I'm highly reliant on an enormous network of people who are just as dedicated to inpatient diabetes as I am. And that is by far and away the greatest joy for me, working with people, seeing that they're all as enthusiastic as I am, and actually working together to try and produce a series of documents which have been downloaded, 500,000 times, 1 million times. I mean, I know that, for example, the DKA document, when we published it in Diabetic Medicine in 2021, I think it was now, it was downloaded 44,000 times from the journal website. And the next most downloaded document the whole year was 7,000 times. So, I mean, when I saw that data, I was like, oh my goodness me, that's amazing. And so I like to think that I set out to be somebody who helps improve the care of somebody with diabetes in hospital. And if our documents, as we as a group have done that, then I take great pleasure in taking that and making sure that people have been helped. It's a definite team effort. I just happen to be at the front of that team. My name, and each document is written by a different group of people. So there are only a few of us who've got the whole overview of everything that's being done. But it's a great pleasure, great honor, and that is what I've taken away from being the chair of JBDS.
And would you like to still be involved with the group when you are not the chair anymore?
Well, I hope so, but that will be up to the new chair, Omar Mustafa from King's. He's the new chair. So he and I have been liaising very closely since he was elected as the new chair. So he'll take over from me in June when I take over as chair of ABCD. And then I'm at his beck and call. If he wants me to be involved, I will, of course, be involved. And I hope he doesn't drop me. Omar, please don't drop me. But hopefully, because it's a bit of corporate memory, isn't it? So I've got a lot of I've been having done so much for so long and had my fingers in every pie that JBDS has done over the last 3 or 4 years. Hopefully I can continue. because it's, you know, I love it so much.
So you just mentioned there in June you'll be becoming the chair of the ABCD. How do you feel about taking on this role, and what are your hopes for the future of the organisation?
It's a massive set of shoes to fill. You know, as I mentioned right in the beginning, my colleague Richard Greenwood was one of the co-founders of ABCD, and when he retired, I asked him for, you know, just as he was retiring, I said, what's your legacy? And he went, ABCD, without any hesitation. And he'd been obviously a consultant for more than 30 years, and he said that without a doubt. And in those days, ABCD was only about 8 or 9 years old. For me, you know, it's going to be a much bigger proposition than JBDS. JBDS obviously just focuses on inpatients. ABCD is the organisation that represents the voice of the doctors in training in diabetes, and it covers everything. So it covers community, primary care, not just secondary care, and it covers, you know, all aspects of diabetes care. So the focus will be slightly different, but I think the way I look at it is that ABCD has a seat at the top table. So we're in regular conversation with John Valabji, the National Clinical Director for NHS England for diabetes, and we're in conversations with a lot of other people who have influence in various different things. So we're talking to CQC about inpatient accreditation at the moment. We're talking with a lot of organisations, PCDS, for example, primary care diabetes, where we have the opportunity to influence national policy and actually international policy if we really want to go that far. And so I think that my aim is to be an advocate for the workforce, for people who care for people with diabetes. That's how I see it. That's what we are. The patients, the people with diabetes, they have a voice. They have a voice through Diabetes UK. The workforce has less of a voice, and within Diabetes UK, or they have a voice, of course they do, but ABCD is their predominant vehicle. So that's what I want to do. It's responsible for education, it's responsible for advocacy, and that's where I see it. So yeah, that's what I want to do. And where do I see the future? Your question was, I think that we've had conversations recently with international organizations from other parts of the world and other parts of Europe who feel that they want to be associated with ABCD. And I don't see there's any harm in that. And if we can have a more global influence, then why not? The more the merrier. All it's about is improving the care of people with diabetes. That's what we're here to do.
You're also the chair of the examining board for the UK Specialist Clinical Exam in Diabetes and Endocrinology, and you were the inaugural chair of the European Board Examination in Endocrinology, Diabetes and Metabolism. Do you feel there is enough funding and support available to help shape the next generation of diabetes experts? And do you have any words of wisdom for those preparing for examinations?
Okay, so yeah, I've been the chair of the SCE for about 6 years. The way I got involved, again, when I started as a consultant back in 2004, my job plan as it was fairly empty, as most consultant job plans often are, because you don't have a list of stuff. And so an advert went out for question writing for the MRCP exam. And so I thought, well, you know, why not? Let's try that. So get involved with the College of Physicians. So I was a question writer for the general MRCP exam for a couple of years. And then in 2006 or 2007, they were beginning to get the SCEs off the ground, and they wanted people to be question writers for the specialty exam, which they asked me to do that. So I said, yeah, okay. And then they asked me to be part of the examination board and the stand setting group. And I did that for quite a long time. I've been part of that group for a long time. I worked my way up to be honorary secretary in 2012, I think it was. I did that for 5 years. And then I became the chair 6 years ago. And again, that is a phenomenal group of people to work with. They are the experts in the field within diabetes endocrinology across the country. And it's the best CPD I could ever hope to be, to get sitting around these tables with these phenomenal colleagues. And so my advice, so, you know, it's all about training. So we want to get a standard. So we're one of the largest SCEs in across the board that the Federation of Colleges runs. And I was the inaugural chair of the European board exam. We did try working. We did have a harmonized exam with the SCE and the European board, but due to a variety of different issues. Unfortunately, that fell apart, and there's going to be a new European exam coming up, I think, later on this year. The first diet will run. So, but it's all about education. So, I was it is the SCE is one of the pillars that registrars have to pass to get their rubber stamp to become accredited to be a consultant. So, it's making sure that the leaders of the future reach a certain standard, and that's the idea. So I like to think that ABCD provides education. We've provided education for the SCE, or we get them to a certain benchmark, and of course, as many people will know, we ran the first diabetes update earlier on this year in a similar fashion to the endocrine update to cover the curriculum for the exam for those people coming up to taking it. So it's all about education. It's all about education, reaching a standard. It's been a real ride. I really enjoy it. It's great fun to do that. If anybody wants to be on the question writing group or wants to think about it, if you've done the exam, then drop us a line, or drop the College of Physicians in London a line. They would be at the MRCP office. They'd be very happy to take your inquiries.
So looking at what is currently happening in diabetes care at the minute, what are you most excited for clinicians and people living with diabetes?
Well, I think there are two things that really come to my mind. First of all is pharmacology. The pipeline of stuff that's coming through is so exciting. We're recording this on the day that Wegovy got the NICE approval. Now, of course, we'll have to wait and see how much it costs and whether CCGs or ICBs will fund it and so on. But actually having the drug available is going to be a potential game changer for people living with overweight and obesity. And similarly, newer agents coming out later on in the year. We've got the potentially tirzepatide coming out with the same things. You've got the 3G drugs coming out. You've got a whole load, glucokinase, the whole load of stuff coming out, which is going to help improve the care of people with diabetes in an attempt to try and help tackle the obesity issue, to help tackle the glycemic issues, reduce their cardiovascular risk, and help people live healthier lives. So that to me is one aspect. It's a really exciting time. And the second one, of course, is technology. I mean, the leaps and bounds in the progress of technology over the last 10 years is so exciting. And again, of course, we all have to deal with the cost of it. But as the cost comes down, as things become more available, as we become more familiar with what time in range means, what time above range means, and the impact that has on not just HbA1c, but actually the hard outcome data in terms of micro and macrovascular complications, that's exciting. And so hopefully the funders who pay for this stuff will see, actually, we do need to invest a bit now because it will cost us too much later on, to try and incrementally improve the access to those devices and improve the access to care. That to me is those are the two big exciting things. There are loads of others. Of course, there are loads of others, foot disease and eye disease and kidney disease and so on. They've all got their technological advances and their pharmacological advances. But it's an exciting time.
So looking at the other side now, what do you find most frustrating about working in the world of diabetes? And is there anything you think that could be done to improve the situation?
What frustrates me is that there is no money to spend now to save later. That's the key. We all live in the same. We all contribute to the pot. We all contribute to the funding that we need. The trouble is, of course, there's never enough funding. As I mentioned earlier on, everything that we want to do costs a bit of money, and there is no money to spend now to save it later. So we all know the benefits of weight loss. We all know the benefits of improving glycemic control in terms of long-term outcomes and long-term consequences. But to try and improve everything is expensive, and that frustrates me. And of course, as I mentioned, the technology. I think that the other thing that frustrates me as a secondary care doctor is the inordinate amount of time that I have to spend doing stuff that is not dedicated to my own specialty. So I like to think of myself as somebody who can give expertise in diabetes and not necessarily have to give expertise for the general medicine that comes in and we have to look after. I'm not saying that I'm not, I look after them, I do the best of my ability, and I give them all the treatment that they need. But that frustrates me in terms of what's going on. Why are we looking after the 90-year-old UTI falls, that maybe other people are more expert at than I am? But those are the frustrating things. but those are minor compared to the joy that I get from the excitement I get from doing my day job, which is, you know, diabetes and endocrinology as well. I do like to think I'm an endocrinologist, not just a diabetes doctor.
So, Ketan, if you walked away from the world of diabetes tomorrow, what would you view as your legacy?
I would like to think that I have I've helped improve the care of inpatients with diabetes across the world. I think that's what I would like to think about. I think that if I've done anything, it's to advocate for inpatients with diabetes and give the people who care for those individuals some of the tools that help standardize and improve the care across the world. That's what I'd like to say.
So thank you, Ketan, for speaking to me today, and thank you for featuring on the first episode of On the Pulse.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for inviting me. I wish the website every success in the future.
Thanks, Ketan. Bye.